Good afternoon, sir. Can you see and hear me?
Yes, I can.
Mr. Roll, can you see and hear me?
Yes, I can.
Thank you. Can we have up on the screen, please, poll 400900? Thank you very much. Can you see the title of this document? It's at the top of the page, Mr. Roll, and under document title, CS Support Services Operations Manual.
Yeah.
And it's dated in this version, version 2, the 29th of January 2001.
Yes.
That would have predated your arrival in the SSC, wouldn't it?
Yes.
We've got earlier versions of this in 1999 and 2000, but I'm going to show you this one because it's most proximate to your arrival in the SSC. And can you see in the middle of the page, or the bottom of the page there, it says owner Peter Burden. Do you remember who he was?
No.
And then at the foot of the page, under distribution, the distribution includes, as the third person there, the CS Support Services Manager. Would that be Mr. Peach?
No.
Which one of any of those would be Mr. Peach? Would it be the second one from the bottom, SSC Manager?
Yes, I believe so.
You'll see that amongst the distribution list is Pathway Document Library. Do you remember what that was?
No.
How were documents like this, this is an operations manual that's about the SSC, promulgated or distributed to people like you that were working essentially on the floor of the SSC?
I don't know. I can't remember ever seeing this.
Was there a sort of an intranet, part of which had a repository for policy and other documents?
I don't think so. I can't remember.
Okay. Can we just look at this, please? Because it describes a process that may be relevant to the issue we were just discussing before lunch. And can we go, please, to page 39? Sorry, not page 39. Page 15. And scroll down to paragraph 4.3. This document says, I'll read it through slowly, the SSC has access to the live system, which can be used to correct data on the system when this has been corrupted in some way. That accords with the evidence you've given so far, doesn't it?
Yes.
The procedure for doing this is as follows. The originator of the change, 1, completes an operational correction request form, OCR form, for every change to data on the live system. The originator may be anyone within ICL Pathway, but is normally the duty manager or a problem manager or business support manager when an incident or problem has been caused by an error in the data. It can be completed by an SSC staff member who detects that the data in the system has become corrupted in the course of diagnosing a fault. And then the originator of the change, 2, emails the OCR form to an authorizer, electronically signing it where possible, and where this is not possible, telephoning the authorizer to confirm that they are sending an OCR, an operational correction request. And can we turn to page 39 of the document, please, where we see an OCR form, or a template OCR form, an operational correction request. And you'll see that there's a title, who the OCR was raised by, their location, when they raised it, the type of change requested, the system to be changed, a due date, an associated Pinnacle number, an authorization signature, date and position, and then scrolling down at the foot of the page, purpose and details of the change, and then over the page, please, regression path, and then signature of the SSC person who did the work, their printed name, the witness, either somebody in the SSC or the fourth line, signature and then name, completion date. Was change tested on reference rigs prior to application, yes or no? System state before change, system state after change, and then scrolling down, comments. Is that a document with which you were familiar?
I don't remember seeing it. I can't remember it.
Was this something that you, to your memory, had to fill out, or somebody had to fill out before they requested you to make a change? It had to be countersigned. You, when making the change, had to sign it, and it had to be countersigned by the witness. Was that habitually done?
I can't remember at all seeing one of these documents before.
If we go back to page 15 of the document, please. At the foot of the page, we'd got to paragraph 2, and then it continues. The authorizer must be one of the following, over the page, please. A duty manager, a business support manager, CS operations manager, or SSC manager, release manager. Then the authorizer, 1, authorizes the change or reports back to the originator why they're not authorizing the change. 2, forwards the OCR form to the SSC electronically with an encrypted electronic signature file. The SSC staff member who is to perform the change, I think that would be you, checks the electronic signature of the authorizer, stores the OCR form and the signature file in the received OCRs folder on the SSC server, wherever possible produces a script to make the data change and test the script on the SSC reference rig prior to running it on the live system, completes the relevant sections on the OCR form to confirm whether they've produced and tested a script or not, prior to making the change, documents the state of the affected part of the system and completes the regression path details on the OCR form. 8, makes the change on the live system. At least 2 people must be present when making changes to the live system. Normally these are SSE staff, but can be 1 SSE staff member and 1 person from the 4th line support unit responsible for the area in which the data change will take place, or 1 SSE staff member and 1 OSD staff member. 9, on completing the data change, documents the state of the affected part of the system and mails an electronically signed copy of the OCR form to the 2nd person who was present whilst making the change. 10, the 2nd person also electronically signs the form and emails it to either the SSE manager or the SSE website controller. 11, updates the Pinnacle and reports back to the originator to confirm that the change has been completed. Then the SSE manager or SSE website controller, over the page, checks the electronic signatures and files the OCR in the completed OCR folder on the SSC server. That very involved and complicated process, was that something that was habitually done when you were undertaking the Category C hacks that you described earlier?
I don't remember doing that, no. We might have done, I just can't remember. I do think that on occasion we'd made changes without a Pinnacle being raised.
In your answer there, you said that you don't remember whether it was done or not, or it might have been. Is that the the category of memory that we're dealing with here, you're saying this could perfectly well have been undertaken on each occasion. You simply now don't remember it.
That's right, yeah. I don't think it was undertaken on, I don't remember it being undertaken at all, but I can't remember.
Thank you very much. That can come down from the screen now. Can we look, please, at poll 302, 3432. And this is an email exchange in 2008, so 4 years after you left, in which you were not involved. If we just look at the second page, please. The inquiry is familiar with this, but I just thought to give you some context first. It concerns a sub-postmaster saying to somebody on his area that on a number of occasions, figures have appeared in the check line of his account. Do you see in numbered paragraph 1, he, the sub-postmaster, that's Mr. Graham Ward, claims that on a number of occasions figures have appeared in the check line of his account. He suspects these have been input into his account electronically without his knowledge or consent. He's certain that he's cleared and remmed out the checks in the correct way. Tells me the checks must be properly cleared on the system to progress to a new account. And then paragraph 2. He's made good about £10,000 and not made good about £11,000 of the shortages which arise from these figures. He claims that because of the abnormal nature of the entries, the shortages have not just rolled over from one branch trading statement to the next, but have accumulated, each being added to the last. E.g., if the account in period 1 showed a shortage of £100, which is not made good, then the shortage shown in period 2 would be at £200. So it was doubling up week on week. Had you heard of any similar issue when you were working in the SSC?
I have heard of similar issues, but I can't remember whether I remember them from when I was there or whether it's things I've read since in the reports about the court case and so on and so forth.
And so, so very fairly you're distinguishing between your real memory of events in which you were involved and things that you read and heard afterwards.
Yeah, I can't remember whether I was aware of them at the time.
Can you help us? What would the investigation that would be required within the SSC if this kind of report had been made to you?
Other than going through the transactions and the number of checks, to look at the number of checks coming in and out and trying to work out where the figures were being generated using extraction of the database, I can't really remember much more about that, apart from that.
Would you examine the code that has undertaken the task of putting in checks in and out?
I think we would only have gone to examine the code if we could find exactly where in the message store the problem was occurring. The problem is that there is so much code that if you don't go in without any sort of reference point, it'd be like trying to find a paragraph or an apostrophe in War and Peace. You wouldn't know where to start. You'd need to know where in the data store, what was going on from the data store, from the database, to give you some idea as to where to start looking. That's what I remember.
And so how practically would, if this is all you'd got to go on, how practically would you go about it?
The first step would be to download the messages from the message store and start trying to follow through where what the figures were and try and work out what was happening with the figures.
Would you be able to see from the message store this doubling up that the sub-postmaster is referring to?
You would probably see that the figures had doubled. Whether you would be able to work out exactly why, I'm not sure. My memory, it's a long time ago and I just can't remember, I'm afraid.
Mr. Rawl, thank you very much. They're the only questions that I ask you. There may be some other questions from other call participants. Can I just check?
Sir, I may have a question for Mr. Rawl. I just would like to take instructions. May we have a 5-minute break now before I do so?
Of course.
Or leave it to my learned friends that may want to ask questions on behalf of their own clients to carry on and deal with that separately.
Let's just check. Are there other people who want to ask questions?
I do want to ask some short questions. I don't imagine they'll take very long.
Let's just have a 5-minute break then, and then we'll have all the questions sequentially.
Thank you, sir. So, can you see and hear us again?
I can.
I think we're now ready, if Mr. Rawl is ready, for questions from Mr. Steen.
Yeah.
So first of all, thank you for the time. It's been of assistance in narrowing down the focus of any questions. Mr. Rawl, I appear on behalf of a large number of sub-postmasters and mistresses. I've got one additional question to ask you, arising out of the questions asked by Mr. Beer this morning and this afternoon. You've discussed with Mr. Beer what can happen when a computer system being used by a sub-postmaster had a dodgy on-off button. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Now, you explained in your evidence, I believe this morning, that that could lead and did lead to loss of data integrity within that system being used by that branch. Is that correct?
Yes.
Can we therefore assume that losses of power would also have the same effect? In other words, losing data integrity within that particular branch system?
I suppose there is the potential. The big loss of integrity with this particular instance was that, from my recollection, that although the data was on the computer, it wasn't getting through to the systems, or not getting through correctly. So then it wasn't being processed correctly.
Right. So there's a potential for losing data when the power goes, but there's also, in your recollection, difficulties with data integrity when there's a connectivity issue. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, if the branch loses connectivity with the rest of the Horizon system for, I don't know, cable reasons or some other hardware reason, could that lead to the same problem in isolating that branch from the rest of the system and losing data?
The data would hopefully still be on the computers in the branch, but certainly from an estate or from the service perspective, it would be as if that that post office had closed and was not operating. So the data wouldn't be visible from the servers until it was switched back on and the data had managed to replicate through overnight.
Right. Would it always recover? We know that it was meant to, but would it always?
If there was a power failure, or so if it suddenly cut off, then there's always, I suppose, the potential for damage, hardware damage to the disk or some of the maybe the boards in the computer. So from that perspective, if the computer was made inoperable, then you would lose the data. So those transactions would have been lost. There's the potential then that if you can't recover any of the data from the disk, then without a paper audit trail, you wouldn't know what had gone on in the counter in the post office that day.
Okay, my last question on this. Were these problems, to your recollection, explained to sub-postmasters and mistresses as being a potential difficulty that could lose data?
I don't know. I don't remember. Well, I don't remember ever explaining that, and I'm pretty sure I didn't. Whether anybody else on the installation teams had explained this to postmasters, I don't know.
Thank you, Mr. Roll.
Mr. Roll, it's Flora Page here, also representing a number of the sub-postmasters. You mentioned earlier the system or tool known as Tivoli, which dealt with the automated system-driven alerts. Is that right?
Yeah, but I can't remember much about that at all, I'm afraid.
No, okay. Just one question then. Do you remember there being any sort of routine or process around it, or were those alerts just dealt with in exactly the same way as a call coming in from an SPM?
I can't remember, I'm afraid.
No. All right. Thank you very much.
So I think those are all of the questions from everyone. There's just one thing that I'd like to do before Mr. Roll finishes giving his evidence, and ask for poll 50678 to be displayed. You mentioned, Mr. Roll, earlier that you'd made 3 witness statements, not 2, when I
So, yes.
and you kindly corrected me. I just wanted to show you the third one. It was in fact an amended version of the second one. Is that right?
I can't remember. It may well have been, yes.
We've got this on the screen now, and we can see that the amendments to it are in red. You can see that in the tram lines, and we can see a further date of it if we go to the last page, page 8, and scroll down. We can see where you re-signed it. It'll have GRO on it. That's covering up your signature so people can't use it.
Yes.
There was only one passage in this witness statement that I took you to that's the subject of amendment, and so I should take you back to it and ask you about the amendments. So can we look, please, at the bottom of page 2, and scroll down, please, to paragraph 8. Can you see paragraph 8 with the amendments in red? You're here also dealing with the laptop standby switch off power issue and what happened when you raised it with your manager. And at the foot of the page, in your amended statement, you say, when I raised this with my manager, Mick Peach, he initially told me not to do anything until he had spoken to, and then over the page, someone about this. Mick did subsequently talk to the hardware team, at which point I found out this was a known problem. And then at the end, you added the sentence, I was told by Mick Peach not to include any details of this when I closed the Pinnacle. Were the amendments that you made to your witness statement, in one case amending an order of events, and in the second by adding a sentence at the end, correct?
They were correct, yes. I think I was trying to clarify it.
Yes, thank you very much. They're the only questions that I ask you, Mr. Roll. Thank you.
Mr. Roll, I'm very grateful to you for giving your evidence to the inquiry. As is obvious to everyone, you have been involved in providing assistance to those who are seeking to unravel what has occurred over very many years. And I don't think I can do other than thank you for that as well. So on many fronts, thank you very much, Mr. Roll.
Thank you.
So that's it for our witnesses this week, and indeed this month. Our next hearing, I think, is scheduled to occur on the 27th of April, in relation to compensation issues, perhaps including bankruptcy and, depending on the position as it's developed by then, tax issues. So that is our next hearing date.
I think, well, I know that you're right, Mr. Beer, and can I say that whereas in the previous hearings, I have in effect invited the parties who wish to make written representations and speak to say whatever it is that they want to say, this hearing may be a little more focused in that I might well take the lead in determining what should be the subject of either written or oral submissions. In any event, over the course of the coming couple of weeks, I hope, I will issue formal directions as to how we intend to proceed.
Thank you very much, sir.
All right then, if not before the 27th of April.
Thank you, sir.